So our next speaker is Matt Hill. Matt serves as an information specialist and federal lobbyist to the Intertribal Timber Council. He previously worked in the United States Senate for 10 years, focusing on tribal and forest management issues for Senator Gordon Smith of Oregon. Matt is a graduate of Georgetown's University School of Foreign Service. He currently resides in his hometown of Glide, Oregon.
Good morning, everyone. As always, I've been taking notes during everyone else's presentation and might be amending mine a little bit. Cody covered some of the ground, so I may skip over a few of these slides and then add in some additional information. I'm not going to go into great depth on infrastructure because we had a full panel discussion and then we did a recap last night at the general membership meeting. Hopefully the takeaway message that everyone's getting is that there's a lot of money out there and there's big pots specifically for TFPA and Good Neighbor Authority projects. So, you know, when you go home, start thinking about how to tap into that and start that process rolling. If you're in the TFPA world, just a reminder that ITC is going to be holding a series of online workshops. It's on ITC's website. You need to register. They're in late May, early June, and there's multiple workshops on different aspects of TFPA that's going to provide a lot of technical assistance from both ITC staff and Forest Service staff to help tribes go through that process and figure out, you know, what you need to do. So please take advantage of that, because I was talking to Phil last night. A lot of the things we're talking about are the result of years of work from ITC and our leadership and our trips to DC and lobbying the administration, multiple administrations, lobbying congressional staff, committees, members of Congress, asking for them to put more trust in tribes to work on federal lands and give us more money for working on our lands. And these things are now happening. And so it's really our responsibility to step up and take advantage of those opportunities, because at some point, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, Congress is going to look back and say, what did tribes do with all this money that we made available to them? And if we don't take advantage of it, if money is still sitting in these pots, it's not going to get reallocated again. And so it's really a historic opportunity to start not only doing work on your lands, but showing what tribes can do on federal lands. So with that as background, I'll move it into my slide deck here. There we go. Is that my first slide? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to do a little legislative, political background just to give your mind a break from infrastructure stuff for a while. So just a reminder, you know, the Congress, House, and the Senate is currently controlled by the Democratic majority in both chambers. In the House, as Senate staffers call it, the lower chamber, it's very closely divided. So there's 435 seats. You can see the split there in colors and numbers. Several of the seats are vacant. For example, Congressman Don Young of Alaska unfortunately passed on. So his seat is vacant. The delta is very narrow, which means that things are passing on very narrow margins, if they pass at all. If you get a handful of Democrats switching sides, it doesn't work. Most of our issues get dealt with in the House Natural Resources Committee, which has a subcommittee on Indian Affairs. It's called the Subcommittee on Indigenous Peoples of the United States. The chairman you see in the top picture there is Raul Grijalva of Arizona. He's really focused most of his attention on kind of land protection issues, so wilderness designations, things like that. Sometimes tribes get brought in, you know, from a cultural protection perspective, less focus on active forest management. However, in November of 2021, the Secretaries of Agriculture and Interior announced a joint secretarial order on co-stewardship, and what it does is commits both departments, and Reed may be speaking a little bit about this later, commits Ag and Interior to develop a policy to, quote, facilitate agreements with tribes to collaborate in the co-stewardship of federal lands and waters. So that is the policy of those departments right now, is to develop agreements. What that is, I think will probably be coming out in more detail, so I look forward to that. So there was a hearing on co-management. After that, you can see in the bottom picture, ITC President Cody Desautels was asked to testify from the ITC perspective on what does co-stewardship, co-management look like. And he talked a lot about things we've been talking about, Good Neighbor Authority, Tribal Forest Protection Act, the challenges tribes face, but also the tools and advantages they can bring to federal lands. Also, more recently, there was legislation introduced that focused on the Mount Hood National Forest with the Warm Springs Tribe of Oregon. It's an example of kind of testing the waters of what does co-stewardship, co-management look like. In that bill, it would give Warm Springs a unique ability to go onto the Mount Hood National Forest, do management activities the way they want to do it, provides funding streams, so kind of a more formal TFPA type agreement, but not limited to fire and fuels and forest health. It actually allows them to go in and open up huckleberry fields, burn, restore habitat based on their treaty foods, their first foods needs. So what do deer and elk and fish need? Great example. Well, I'll just move on to the next one. The upper chamber, the Senate, 50-50 split right now. So when that happens, the Vice President of the United States casts the tie-breaking vote. So it's very slow in the Senate because they have zero margin of error, and they have to have a good majority to pass anything. These are just a list of the senators and the states that they're from that are on the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs. So hopefully all of you are in regular discussion with your congressional folks about what you're doing, because it's an important part of the work we do is to make sure that all of these offices, all of these states know what Indian forestry means in their state. And that's me, my head cut off in the picture there. Okay, politics. So 2022, the fall election this year is what's called a midterm election. So it's halfway through the president's term. And since World War II, whoever the president's party is, they have traditionally lost an average of 26 seats in the House and an average of 4 seats in the Senate. So that if that holds true, and not all rules stay true all the time, the Republicans will easily take the House because there's only a margin of like eight seats there. The graphic below shows kind of a scatter chart of polls across the country and national polls of, do you generally want Democrats or Republicans controlling Congress? And you can see those lines cross sometime around December of 2021, and more people have more faith in Republicans having a majority. And I'm not casting judgment, I'm just saying that's what the trend is. And so if that trend holds and those lines keep going further apart, you're likely to see more Republicans winning seats and having a majority, at least in the House. Senate, who knows, but my personal prediction is at least one chamber of Congress will turn Republican next year. So what does that mean for us? Well, there's good news and bad news, as always. It probably means they're going to tighten the purse strings a little bit, spend a little less money going down the road. You know, we probably won't see the massive increases that we've been seeing in a lot of programs. On the other hand, this guy here, Bruce Westerman of Arkansas, who went to forestry school with Phil Rigdon, he will become the chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee, which would oversee all forestry, all fire, and all Indian affairs. So very important guy. He's a big fan of Indian forestry, and he happens to be a forester. So I think we'll have a good opportunity to continue working on our issues with him. Just a recap of spending, and Caleb did a little bit for FY22, you know, little bump ups for BIA forestry on both TPA and project side. There's also additional money in the FY22 bill for RTRL, which is great. We're already now working on the FY23 appropriations cycle. Every year, the White House releases its proposed budget, and on the Hill, we always said the president proposes, Congress disposes, meaning we throw the budget in the trash can and Congress gets to write the appropriations bill. But it is a starting point. I was very happy to see that the Biden administration proposed a significant increase in BIA forestry, $8.8 million over FY22, and major plus-ups in other natural resources programs. Now Congress is in the process of figuring out how it wants to allocate resources, and we're working closely with appropriators on that, and ITC provided testimony in support of further increases. Why is the bus up there? You may be thinking, that's an omnibus? There's minibuses if the bill's smaller. There's all sorts of weird congressional terms. This is a visual of what BIA forestry appropriations has looked like over the last decade or so, corresponding to my work with ITC, I might add. So you see kind of a nice gradual increase from around the 40 million mark to the 60 million mark. And then the red column is what the FY23 budget proposal from the Biden administration looks like. So it'd be nice to hit that number. And the green thing is the Green Book, which everyone keeps talking about. That's the budget document that comes out from the administration every year. Farm Bill, Cody mentioned this a little bit too. The current Congress is writing an FY22 Farm Bill, but Republicans think that if they gain the majority, they could write a different, better Farm Bill. So I'm kind of thinking that the Farm Bill is not going to happen until calendar year 2023 and the Republicans may have a chamber. Either way, it doesn't matter. The fixes we're asking for are bipartisan common sense, and it's basically fixing good neighbor authority so that tribes can retain receipts and build GNA programs. And then there's also this landscape scale restoration program with the Forest Service that was written in the 2013 Farm Bill that clearly intended to include tribes, but somehow left them all out. So we got to fix that. There were some of our ITC guys, I think that was the 2018 Farm Bill that we were talking about. One thing I just wanted to mention, a few weeks ago on Earth Day, President Biden went out to Seattle and signed an executive order on old growth, and you got to kind of read between the lines on this one. So technically, the executive order says that it recognizes the role that federal forests play in combating climate change and the importance of maintaining their resilience and to conserve old growth forests. Executive orders are not law. They're not even regulations. They are statements of an administration's priorities and direction to federal agencies to engage in a particular course of action. So what action did it direct? And I don't know if Reed's going to go into this as well, but it directed the Forest Service and DOI, but not BIA, as far as I know, to define, identify, and complete an inventory of old growth and mature forests on federal lands, accounting for regional and ecological variations as appropriate. But when you get into what the conservation of them means, it talks more about the effects of fire and climate change and that kind of thing. So it's not going to impact BIA lands, but it might impact how and what you can do with the feds on their land. So just keep that in mind. We've gone through this wildfire strategy, and Cody did a good job summarizing it, so I'm not going to go into great detail here, but this is the big strategy that is being rolled out by both USDA Forest Service and DOI. The map there is what Cody was referencing. This is a map showing high-risk and DOI lands across the country. So when DOI is looking through their lens, this is what they see. The red places are, the top priority fire sheds. The orange lands are Indian lands. So you might see some of yours there. And as these projects get rolled out, these fuels reduction projects, and I've looked on the website, both agencies are doing a pretty good job of, even if it's not on Indian lands, they will say who the kind of relevant tribes are that they're talking to. So in Oregon, right now, there's a lot of money going to the Deschutes National Forest in Central Oregon for fuels treatment, and on the website it says, relevant tribe, Warm Springs. And I think this is my final slide, but TEK. So the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy and the White House Council on Environmental Quality, CEQ, initiated new federal guidance, or is initiating guidance on indigenous traditional ecological knowledge. They call it ITEK. So they solicited comments from the public, and ITC wrote and submitted comments. And these are just kind of a few of the comments we made. We talked about how tribes can braid Western science and TEK to guide management decisions and actions. We said that TEK should be integrated into regulations, plans, and projects, which could include NEPA analysis and talking to tribes about, their perspective, their TEK perspective on how a certain management activity either is consistent with or not consistent with TEK. And we encourage federal land managers to collaborate with local tribes on TEK practices. And I think this is something we'd really, for the Forest Service, like to see integrated into the forest planning process, and I think there's existing statute that could help that a little bit. So this is a great step, and I think it's government-wide. It's not just land management agencies, but we focus more on the land management. So that concludes my presentation. How am I on time?
2 minutes.
I have 2 minutes of questions. It's perfect. Anything I missed or made more convoluted? Great. Well, thank you very much.